Hi, I'm LaFaz Effects, and this is how I made my floating E.T. prop for Halloween. I got this tricycle at a tag sale, and I started by taking the black base plate off the bottom. I made the base of the bike pedals with popsicle sticks that slide right onto the bike's base. Once I'd finished the base of the pedals, I fabricated the rest of the pedals out of more popsicle sticks and some scrap plastic. I spray painted them black and attached them to the bike with hot glue. To make Elliot, I glued together 2 orange juice bottles and covered them in old screen to make a uniform shape. I used some pipe for the neck and aluminum wire to make his arms and legs. I found a jacket and some jeans that matched his outfit pretty well from the film, as well as a scarf for E.T. However, the jacket I found had a Super Mario logo on it, so I painted that over with a few layers of red that matched the red from the hoodie pretty well. I used some pool noodles to bulk out Elliot's arms and legs. And this is him with the clothes on. I filled the mold with spray foam to make the head, and then made the nose with some old packaging foam. I didn't sculpt much detail into Elliot's face because I knew it wouldn't be very visible, so I tried to make up for that in the paint job. For E.T., I sculpted out his predominant features and made a foam and tinfoil base so I wouldn't use up too much clay. I put a thin layer of clay over the entire base to give a uniform working area so the rest of the features can be sculpted on later. Once I had a rough shape I liked, I started adding the details. And this is the final sculpt. My dad helped me build a mold box where I would eventually pour the silicone around the sculpture of E.T. And this is a time lapse of me pouring the silicone. I secured the sculpt to the bottom of the mold box with some hot glue because the base of it is made of foam, and if I didn't attach it to the bottom, it would float to the top of the silicone while I was still pouring it. Once I ensured that E.T. was secured to the bottom, I began preparing for the silicone. I measured equal parts A and B of the silicone by weight, and once I'd mixed it thoroughly, I began to pour it over the sculpture. I ended up having to mix 3 batches of silicone to fill the entire mold box. But then disaster struck because the 2 plastic walls I had made to save some silicone had leaked and filled up one of the 2 corners and slightly filled the other. Once the silicone had fully cured, I took out the silicone that had leaked and cut it up into small pieces and laid it out over top of the rest of the silicone. I mixed up a small batch of silicone to pour over the small pieces to connect them all and make them part of the final mold. Once this final layer had cured, I began the process of taking the mold out of the mold box. My dad and I had to end up partially deconstructing the mold box to remove the mold. The mold turned out great and captured all the small details I had put into the sculpture. I then began the process of casting the face in resin. If you ever use resin, make sure to wear a respirator and work in a well-ventilated area as it produces toxic fumes. I mixed up equal parts A and B of resin by volume and then began to pour it into the mold. Casting resin, the type of resin I'm using for this project, turns white when it's fully cured, so you start to see that turn white in his nose. I then begin to spread the resin around with a paintbrush, which makes it cure faster, and you can see that happen rapidly. I then begin to mix up the second batch of resin that I'm going to use to fill in any areas where the first batch of resin didn't quite reach. For this batch, instead of letting it sit, I'm constantly churning it around in the mold to ensure that it reaches all the little details and crevices. As you can see, it cures very fast and it's already reached a gummy-like consistency. Once I demold it, it comes out beautifully, and I now have a plastic copy of the E.T. sculpture I made earlier. And it is very thin, so I'm going to be foam filling it later. To paint it, I mask off the eyes with some generic silly putty, and then give it a base coat with some spray paint. I also roughly sketch out where his irises and pupils will be. At this point, I haven't foam filled it yet, so you can still see right through it when I hold it up to the light. I used some generic spray foam I got from Home Depot to foam fill the head. My dad is doing it here so I can film, but as you can see, we just fill it up slowly with the spray foam, and this expands a lot, so it'll fill in all the cracks and crevices later. This is the foam after it's fully expanded and cured, and I began to carve out a small area so I could put in a hook to attach it to the body. This is a time lapse to show you how I painted the face and the eyes. And this is the final paint job. For E.T.'s body, I used more aluminum wire inside of the milk carton I'd already attached to the bike. I twisted it around and then posed it in a way that I liked. I covered the wire in plastic packaging that I've been saving up to pad out his body. I then attached the face and wrapped him in the blanket, and it was done. My dad helped me hang it up in the front yard, and it's safe to say we got a lot more trick-or-treaters this year than usual.